there. So first of all, to the attendees, whether it's Facebook Live or here on our Zoom, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to listen to what we have to say today. My name is Zach Nicklin. I'm from the National Center for Autonomous Technologies. And today I've got Chris Cruz with me from West Valley College. And Chris is going to be talking about ways that we can improve our flight skills. So Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you come to use drones?
So my base program at my college is park management. And so as I got into park management and teaching it more after being a professional for 20 something years, I decided that drone technology, as well as geospatial technology, would be a really important add to our program. And so the geospatial program came first. That's been going on for about 20 years. And then our UAS program is more recent, and we're in our 4th year now of our UAS program. And it's something that I've been interested in since I've learned about the technology, and I felt like it was something that we could bring to the college. And I got support from the college. And I also represent the National Geotech Center as well, which is part of a National Science Foundation funded project, just like NCAT. Unmute yourself.
My apologies. So I know, at least up here, I'm in Northwest Minnesota, and there's not year-round flying out here, at least outdoors. Between the cold and the snow, and even on days when you can, when it's almost 0 out or less. I don't want to be out there freezing in order to get some flight hours in. So what's your suggestion on that? How do we go about improving our skills without necessarily getting outside and taking our drone outside?
So we take a 3-step approach to training in our institution. The first part of it is using simulator training, which I'll talk about more extensively. Then we use smaller drones, kind of like the Parrot Mambos or the DJI Telos, and then we graduate to the larger aircraft. So what I'll focus on today is just how do you work with simulators and what kind of choices you can make with simulators. When I first learned how to fly drones, the first thing that the instructors did with us was put us on a simulator. And in our classroom, we have a simulator. It's called Real Flight 9, and you can set up different ways of flying different aircraft, that sort of thing, in the classroom. But since COVID-19 hit, we had some issues with that because we couldn't meet in the classroom. We still can't meet in the classroom. So last spring, I reached out to the Drone Racing League, and the Drone Racing League said, hey, we'd be happy to help you. They sent myself and my students some codes to use their simulator, and then we started to use a sim. And so what I'd like to do is, as we go through for this next half hour, is talk to you a little bit about the DRL simulator and how we used it in our program, because it has the ability to teach you a lot of different flying skills, but also allows you to see visually what you're actually doing when you're flying in terms of your controls and what the aircraft is actually doing. So we were very fortunate to get cooperation with DRL, and we're very thankful for that. And they provided us with codes, and then the students got to fly. So in the time period that we could not fly in class or work in the classroom, we actually still had a means to fly, and we're going to be using it in the spring semester coming up. So I'd like to show you the demo. I've got a demo video, and then if you have questions afterwards, I can answer questions for you. And hopefully this will help you get some new ideas. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, here we go. And so there are different components that I'm going to show you and introduce you to that you can use with your students in various ways. So just to look at the screen right now to start with, you have their solo race option. There's the freestyle option. There's multiplayer. So this is something that you can do at the end of the semester with your students and actually have your own race. There's also the training. There's the tryout section, and there's the workbench. The workbench is the area where you can actually build a drone. And now you can see that there's other options as well. Tournaments, community drones, the physics, and the map editor.
And what we'll do is we're going to go back to the training segment and take a look at the training segment. This area is really interesting because it has 3 different modes that you can fly and you can learn in. There's the basic, there's behind the goggles with FPV, and then there's what they call the road to pro. And this is something that I show my students. I had a student that flew up to about 200 hours this semester, which was really fantastic. And so let's look at the basics first. When you look at the basics, there are 14 missions that you can fly and your students can work through. And this is a great start for them. The one that I like to start with is a learn to fly, which is mission number 1. We're going to come back to this in a minute, and I'll show you a demo related to that. There's then the quest for 2, which is the behind the goggles. So this is a beginner mode as well. And this has 20 different missions. You're using your FPV goggles. And this has the opportunity to make things a little bit more difficult, more challenging, but yet another level that you can work with and you can practice at. So now I'm going to go back and we're going to show you the road to pro. When you click on that, that has 20 more missions that you can work on that make things a little bit more difficult and challenging for you to fly. And here there's also 20 missions. So you have a total between 3 segments of 54 missions that your students can fly over a period of time. So that's going to be something that they'll have access to and be able to use in the DRL sim. Now, let's take a look over here at the workbench before we go back into the training. And the workbench is interesting because you have the capacity here to build drones. And what's really nice is you can actually design and make your own drone, and they have the capacity to show you the different pieces and parts that you can put together. You can see here that I have several drones that I've built already. Now, if I select the new drone, then I can pick a different body type. So let's look at the Flacco 4-inch. And now I'm in the panel where I can look at the different options. And it has various parts and pieces that you can select. Also, you can look at thrust, weight, top speed, torque, drag, RPM, and peak temp. Now, these are areas that I haven't yet explored, but what I would like to do in the future is to be able to explain each of these specific areas and how they impact the flight of the drone. And so that's something I want to work with in the future. It also talks about, it has your data, the spin rate of your aircraft. Now, if I go over here and look at frame and frame size, I can look at the different frames. In this case, if I wanted to choose a different frame, I could. I'm going to stick with the frame that I have. Now, what I can do is I can look at the motors. So now I can choose a variety of motors that might work with my particular drone. So I got a set of motors. Now I can choose props, the kind of props that I want, and it'll actually show, and then they'll spin. And then I can choose the type of battery that I want. And so that will be something that I can also include. And then there's some extras that some of them have. And then your style, you can stylize it with different colors. And then you can also change your colors in terms of your trail. So when you're flying and you actually see your trail, that's your aircraft. You can change the color of your propellers. You can change other details that you might have on the aircraft, and just refine things a little bit more. Now, as you work with this, then you can say, you can give your aircraft a name, and I'm going to call this one Geo Ed 2, and then I'm going to save it. So this is my drone that I just built, and as I said, you can get more detailed in how you design things and also how you explain each of these areas. And as I learn and understand more, I'll be able to put together teaching modules in relation to all of those areas. And then there's just save the drone feature. So now I've saved a drone, it's GeoEd 2, and now it's there. So now I can go back, and if you notice down here at the bottom, it shows my GeoEd 2, and that's the drone that I just built. So I have actually now several drones that I've built that can be used. Now, let's go back to the training area. Oh, and the training area, you have in the basics section, you've got an area that says learn to fly. And I like this particular exercise because it shows you more about the flight characteristics of your drone and what the actual terms mean. So right now we're waiting for it to spin up. It takes a little while for it to cycle. And once it comes in, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start it. And you're going to see here the little launch pad, and you'll see the drone. And if you look on the right bottom corner, you'll see my controller. And it'll show what the controller is doing. So right now I'm going to have the drone climb. And it's still cycling. So now students can see what the sticks are doing and what the aircraft's doing and what behavior it is. So now it's in a hover, and I'm bringing it up to a good level of flight. Now it's going to ask me, okay, go ahead and pop the balloon out in front. So I'm going to pitch my aircraft forward, and I'm going to fly forward until I can get through the target and I can actually push through the balloon. Step number 1. Now it's going to reset, and it's going to give me more commands. So I'm going to yaw right, yaw left. These are all movements that aircraft make in any circumstance, and this is a good way for you to understand and learn that information. So now it's going to ask me to pitch forward. I'm going to pitch forward, and I'm going to fly toward that flag. Now it's going to stop, and it's going to give me a new set of instructions. And it's going to say, okay, I want you to roll right. So I'm rolling right. Now it's going to have me roll. And so now I'm in a position where I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to pitch forward, and I'm going to hit that balloon. There you go. Now I'm going to go forward, and I'm going to hit the next balloon. And I'm going to watch my targets and continue to follow the targets through and until I get to the next one. Now I'm going to lower my aircraft, continue to fly through the balloons, lower my aircraft again, and then I get the next balloon. All right. Now it's going to stop. It's going to cycle again. It wants me to roll left. And now I'm going to roll left, and I'm going to pitch forward here as soon as it tells me to. And then I'm going to go toward the other target. So now I'm heading for that balloon. There's my next target. Now I'm going to roll right, pitch forward. Now I'm going to roll left, and I'm going to pitch forward as well. Roll right, pitch forward, roll left, pitch forward, and now I'm going to go up. It's going to reset, and it's going to have me go through the gate. So I'm going to roll right, I'm going to pitch forward, drop down a little bit, now I'm going to go through. There you go. And that's your first run through. And this becomes your opportunity to practice. And now you can see it's going to review with you what you've done. So now you're using the throttle, and that's just throttling up. And you can see the throttle moving. And now you're going to see it yaw, which is now a review of the movements you started at the very beginning of the presentation. And then it's going to go and do a roll. So it's going to roll left, and then it's going to roll right. And so now, by doing these particular skills at the end of your flight, you now have had the ability to review with your students what you're doing. Now it's going to pitch forward, and so that's the other movement that the aircraft is making. So now, as it's flying, it's going to settle, and it's pitching back. And then it's going to continue the demo of the flight, and then it's going to say, okay, you've mastered the skills, and now you're done. And that is an example of how you can actually fly in that first phase of using the simulator. Now, what's interesting is you have that ability with the aircraft now, and now you can actually go through, and if you want to, you can take it in something that's called the Sandbox and go into physics, and this is where you can actually fly your aircraft. Now, this is going to take a little while to spin up, but basically once the Sandbox opens, you have the ability to take your aircraft and you can fly it under the conditions within the Sandbox. And so this is a unique opportunity to take what you built and actually put it into flight, into actual flight. Now, we're not going to get to complete this, but this is what it looks like in the Sandbox. You can add different features to it later and design in the map editor the area that you want to fly. But this is the means by which you can train and work with the drone that you build. And so this is a great opportunity for students for use with the flight simulator. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy getting to know the Drone Racing League simulator.
All right, Chris, great video there. Got a couple of questions for you. Well, first of all, I ran into the DRL simulator probably a couple of years back now, and I think they've done quite a bit to it since that time. Excuse me. But the fact that you can actually sit there and build your aircraft and it changes those characteristics, when you change the motor, it changes the RPMs and the torque values, and being able to see how that directly affects the different values of the aircraft. That's absolutely awesome. I did not see that when I took a look at it a while back. So what type of equipment do you need in order to run this? So obviously we need a computer to run it on. And now the computers that you run it on, are they a little more high speed, or are they just kind of, straight out the box typical computers?
Well, I've used this on a laptop. So that whole training video was done with my laptop, and I've got 32 gigs of RAM on my computer. So it's pretty good in terms of any kind of drone technology you want to apply to it. You can use a pretty large array of controllers, gaming controllers. There's a variety of them. A DRL actually has a list, and if anybody wants to contact me, I can provide that list of controllers. I use a Futaba Interlink controller. It's the same controller that we used for our Real Flight 9 simulator in the classroom. So what I did was I just grabbed that controller and started using it. But most game controllers will work on this system. And the way you get to this, if you're wanting to get the simulator, you just go to Steam, and then you can sign on to Steam. If you have a Steam account already, you can sign on. And at least the last time I checked, the cost was $10 to get the sim. If you're an educator, there's a process that you can go through to get free codes for yourself and your students. We were able to arrange an agreement with through the Geotech Center with the DRL, with Drone Racing League, and so that makes it manageable for instructors that are teaching and using drone technology.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I love that they've got a separate way for educators to be able to use it, because we all know that budgets are tight these days, especially in the time of COVID, when it's really difficult to get students actually in the door there. So looking at it, there's multiple different skill levels, everything from beginner on up. And now as you progress through that, I noticed that they were focusing a little bit more on FPV. So is this something that you could just go ahead and plug your FPV goggles into your computer and it'll pull it up on the screen there?
Yeah, you can use FPV in that process. I have not gone to that level just yet. I'm trying to get my students established at that kind of that entry level and then work up to it. But I have had some students that have used their FPV goggles. I had one student last spring, he put in 200 hours on the sim. And so it was pretty interesting. So yeah, you can definitely do that. And there are, again, lists that DRL has for FPV goggles and for the controllers that can be used. And what's interesting is if you're watching right now on TV, there's a series, DRL has a race series that's going on that they normally do in person at the different flight venues, but they're doing it remotely, where all the pilots are at their homes and they're flying these really incredible courses. And a lot of what you see there is really represented in the sim. It's all in the sim that they're doing that kind of work. So when you watch the Drone Racing League show and look at their competitions, they're doing all that through the simulator. So there's a lot of high tech, flying that goes on with those guys. And I like to watch them just because, to see the flight skills that they've developed. And you can take those flight skills that you're using with the sim and take them outside. And I know for me, it made my flying outdoors much better because of the skills that I built on the sim.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you're just talking the basics of flight now, I think we recognize that those of us out there doing mapping missions and things like that, it's slightly different flying than your typical FPV flying, where you're moving very very quickly in different directions. But I think getting that hand-eye coordination and getting used to the sticks, especially if flying is new to you, will absolutely be a great help. So for the other educators out there that may be watching, have you had a chance to kind of look at the different missions and get an average time that it takes a student to go through?
Well, the missions like the first one I just showed you doesn't take very long. We're talking about, 5 minutes or less. And I think as you go through the missions, they increase in difficulty, but they try to contain it to a certain time frame so it doesn't get too long. What's nice about this though is at the end, and we did this at the end of the semester, I actually challenged the students to let's race at the end. And so we actually did our own racing at the end too. But the other part of it is you mentioned the map aspect of it. And for those of us that are map geeks like me, they have this map editor and they have this whole system where you can set your scene and build your scene and then fly your drone in that particular environment. So there is kind of a mapping component to this, not a mapping component in terms of mapping and surveying, but it allows you to create the scene that you want to fly in. And so you can take every drone that you build and you can take it out into the sandbox and actually fly the routes with the kinds of obstacles you want and get practice. And actually that works out pretty good because in real life, when we're out flying missions for mapping and that sort of thing, there's all kinds of obstacles, everything from antenna towers to power lines to structures, trees, and you can simulate all of that within the sandbox utilizing the map editor. So it's a really pretty cool process. And I think as the semester approaches for spring, for me, I'm going to be developing some specific training modules that incorporate that part of the sandbox, but also the actual design build part and explain all those different components of flight, the torque and that sort of stuff as it relates to the drone. So I'm really excited about using that capability of it. The first semester, we got thrown into this halfway through the spring, so I didn't really have much downtime to really kind of jump into this and get really into the weeds on it. Now I have more time, so that's what we're gonna work on for next semester.
Well, great. That really looks like an all-around solution. I mean, everything from as an instructor being able to go through and even handpick modules, module in Quest 1, module 1, 7, 5, and 9, and move on to 2 and 3 as we advance. So, depending on the size of my credit load for the particular class that I'm using it in, I can really customize what I want the students to do and really what skills I want them to pull from it. Further being able to do my own map, I like having my own customized stuff. And then, Drone Racing League, they have the experience with drones, with building drones. And so I really love to see when you get a chance to look into it, how accurate that may be, as I change my props and things like that. Does it match up? Further with, I don't know if you know this one, but with those parts, do they actually give you the actual name of the parts? So for instance, I can go and I can look up that exact part and get that same motor?
I'm sure you could. Now, I will add one thing to what you were saying is all of the flight characteristics, all the design characteristics of the drones that they're using have all been put through Georgia Tech's aerospace program. And so they work very closely with Georgia Tech and developing flight characteristics that actually match what really is happening with the drones. And so the whole science behind it is pretty solid. And if you go on to DRL's website, they actually have some videos that I share with my students that talk about all these different characteristics and what Georgia Tech is actually doing. So they have a cooperative relationship where they worked with Georgia Tech to understand the engineering behind the drones and how they fly and flight characteristics, and then how you can use them within the sim. One of the things that I've asked DRL to help with, and I don't know what their progress is at this point, but I've asked them to figure out a way where instructors can actually log on and see what their students are doing and keeping a record of what they're doing. And I know from an instructional standpoint, that's an important thing because that's how you assess students. But the capabilities are pretty amazing. And I think why I'm focusing and spending more time with the DRL sim is that there's a significant amount of science behind it.
Yeah, it really seems like it. I mean, I had no idea that they got with Georgia Tech and put it through its paces there. I really appreciate when a company actually goes in and takes care of those details. That's absolutely great. And absolutely, as you said, a learning management system behind it would be a very, very valuable tool for us educators. Even outside of our students, just getting that extra experience and extra time when maybe the weather doesn't allow us. So thank you very much, Chris. So for those out there watching, we welcome any questions you may have for Chris. You can go ahead and pull up the chat and send those questions in. And we'll give folks a few minutes to see if they have any questions there. But no, this really looks like a good tool. And it's something that now I'm going to have to spend some time investigating. We've actually used the real flight simulators. We use them quite a bit with our summer camps. And those are a big hit. I love the way that you can, change all the different styles of aircraft, not just those racing style. But, students love the competition. They love racing. And so if we can introduce that aspect as well, I'm sure we get a few smiles out of them. So that's absolutely great.
And, one of the things I mentioned to them too, and it's kind of an odd thing to think about, but this could potentially become a career path for somebody. They have professional racers now, and these professional racers, they make some pretty good money on the racing circuit. So, that's a whole nother aspect to it.
Absolutely. And I've seen that there's quite an age range, while mostly you see a lot of kind of the 18 to 30, 34 range. I've seen some older folks older than that. And I believe one of the last champions was about a 16-year-old kid, correct?
Yeah, actually that young person was from the Bay Area, lived, I think, in Cupertino or in San Jose, and they won the world championship. And that was probably 3 or 4 years ago.
That is definitely a bullet point for one's resume, huh? So,
exactly.
But all right, I think we've got it a few minutes. I'm not seeing any questions on the Facebook Live feed, and I'm not seeing any in the chat here. So I won't take up too much more of your day. But Chris, love to have you here. Thanks for showing us the Drone Racing League simulator. Again, I think it's going to be something that I'll definitely investigate, and probably a few of those out in attendance will as well. So thank you very much. I know you've got another nice big presentation today, and I'm sure you got some prep to do for that. So just one more time, thank you very much, Chris, and good luck, and have yourself a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for hosting and doing the work that you're doing. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for all our attendees out there, thanks for taking the time out of your day. If you have any questions in the future, please feel free to reach out to us. Chris left his email address there in the chat. And then, of course, I am available, and you can find me at our website, ncatech.org. So that's ncatech.org. Thank you all, and y'all have a great day.
Thanks, Zach.